I work with Diego. We work in the same study area, so it's very good that he presented a lot of things that I can't skip. So I'm also going to talk about transitions in these ancient fishing communities, but before this catastrophe. So, and I'm going to be talking specifically on shellfish hooks on mussel shells, Chilean mussel shell. So then fishing has been the main subsistence strategy of past coastal societies, and shellfish hooks have been found in several sites along the Pacific coast associated to changes in fisher communities' trajectories. Here we have 4 examples, 2 from Baja California, Mexico, that have dates between 11,000 and 8,000 years before present. We have 1 example later on from the Channel Islands in California with dates around 2,500. And we have an example from the area of Taltal with a date around 7,500 years BP. They are made on different mollusk species, but it's interesting how the presence of this specific technology show changes in their lives. So then the archaeological context of these shellfish hooks are, as I said, in Mexico, the presence of these artifacts are related to or are coincident with the initial occupation and associated with offshore and deep water fish remains, indicating a specialized fishing knowledge very early on in the population of this coast. Then we have, during the Middle Holocene in Peru and Chile, also evidence of this type of technology. And in Peru is associated with new fishing, is interpreted as a new fishing technique, associated with evidence of intensified occupation, changes in faunal assemblages, and environmental conditions too, with warmer sea surface temperatures. And in Chile, the presence of these hooks, shellfish hooks, are contemporary with an increment in fishing activities, also growing population and increasing social complexity. As you heard in the last presentation, this increasing, this change through time with more sites, bigger sites, more specialized maritime adaptation, it starts with the presence of this specific tool. And then in California, it's also interpreted as a refined fishing technique linked also to growing population, resource intensification, and social complexity. So it's interesting to see how this artifact is set within the archaeological context. So I'm going to skip this, you already know. So in northern Chile, there are the presence of this specific artifact is in different sites along the northern coast with dates between 7,000. These are associated dates, and they go between 7,800 to around 6,000 years before present. And then we have another group with later associated dates between 5,000 and 4,500 years BP. Then in the specific area that I'm going to use as a case study, it's a research that we are just starting. We have this shellfish hook that was directly dated with a date around 7,400 years BP, and later on around 4,500 years BP, we have these other type of shellfish hooks, the ones with the longer shanks. So we have also within this period some changes in the way people was making these artifacts. And again, we have this long trajectory, historical trajectory for these fishing communities with changes in the type of sites they were occupying, the technology, and also the fauna remains going from more generalized to a more specialized maritime subsistence, as you heard in the last presentation. So in the shellfish hooks that I'm talking about are in between, before the catastrophic event. So I'm not gonna get into detail because this already Diego talked about it, but the shellfish hook is at the beginning of this process where there are more sites, the sites are thicker with a more complex stratigraphy, etc. Then also this period is also, if you see, these are the list of fish species, and over there, archaic 1, archaic 2 and 3. The archaic 2 is when the shellfish hook appears in the archaeological record, and you see that there are more species present in the archaeological record. Also, around 7% to almost 90% of the fish remains are Chilean jack mackerel, and also we start seeing species from epipelagic oceanic habitats. So there is a clearly focus on maritime, very developed maritime skills. Here are a few pictures of the swordfish and the marlins that are the oceanic species that we start finding in the archaeological record. And here the Chilean jack mackerel, that is from the beginning of this shellfish hook period, is the 90% of the fish sample. So it's a very important resource through time, through thousands of years. So then when we start thinking, well, so then we see these changes and these processes, what was going on with the environment that was so important for these fishing communities. So then we have reconstructed local sea surface temperature on Fissurella maxima, keyhole limpet. So we have shells that are associated to dates that you can see here. So then we have the early Holocene sea surface temperature that are much cooler, with a mean of 10 degrees Celsius. And then when the shellfish hook appears, there is an increment in the sea surface temperature of almost 5 degrees. So it's an important change for the maritime habitat. And this is interesting because it correlates with more regional paleoceanographic reconstructions. Some based on isotopic analysis on foraminifera species, and also the studies done on reservoir effect. And these two studies show that there is an increase in sea surface temperature. You see here the red square around the time where we are seeing the presence of these more specialized fishing tools. And also there is a change in the upwelling activity, which is also related to cooler waters and waters with more nutrients. And these two changes have been interpreted as a change in the location of two main oceanographic currents along the South Pacific. So then, in the early Holocene, these two currents from south and north, the place where they mix, it's south, and then after all, this current changes, so then the whole oceanography of the area changes towards a less upwelling activity and warmer waters. And that has a huge implication on what species we are finding, how much we are finding, the currents we have, waves, etc. So it's a very important change that is coincident with also an archaeological transformation. And preliminary morphometric analysis we are doing on the specific tools that we are having from the whole area to evaluate changes through time in space and hook shapes. Through time, I mean from the beginning of this shellfish hook period, which is 7,500 to 4,500 years BP, when this specific artifact disappeared. We don't know yet why, if it's climate or some human decision. So then we have 29 complete and highly complete shellfish hooks from 4 sites so far, and we define landmarks and semi-landmarks. We use 2 softwares, the TPS and then the Morpho-J, to do the digitalize and then the PCA analysis. And the preliminary results are very interesting because first we group the artifacts through time based on the associated dates that we have. So then the earlier artifacts, which are the ones in blue and black, there's only one black dot, it's the only one we have with that date. They group along the principal component 1, which also is important to notice how high is the percentage of explanation of this PC1. And they group in high, where the shank is short, and in PC2 they group in the area where the opening of the hook is kind of in the middle. But then later on, after the 7,000, no, there is a problem here with the dates. Now the dates should be, the blue and black should be 7,500, and then the ones with yellow and red are between 5,000 and 6,000 and 4,500. Well, anyway, they are the early and the late hooks. And the late ones are more spread. So then you see the red dots and the yellow ones. The red dots are very close to one type of shade with a medium opening and a long shank. And the yellow ones are in both places. So then we are seeing changes in these artifacts, and it's interesting now to explain why we're seeing these changes through time. Then when we compare in space, what is going on in the study area, we are grouping the artifacts by sites. And one site, some sites have a very confined shape. For example, the site with the red dots, which are long shanks and medium opening, but there are some others, like the purple one, that have hooks with different type of shapes. Some with long shanks, but others with short shanks. Now the question is why we have this change. It's because different species, we don't know yet. We are going to explain that in near future. So then, as a conclusion, what was the instances of transitions experienced by fishing communities along the northern coast of Chile? The appearance of shellfish hooks in the area of Taltal, our case study around 7,000 years BP, coincides with, first, higher SST than previous times, warmer waters in the ocean, thicker deposits, more complex stratigraphy, and also with the appearance of shellfish hooks in other areas of the northern coast. So then what was the role of climate, migration, or technology on the evidence transition towards a more specialized maritime lifeway? And we have a change, again, in oceanographic conditions, we have a technological innovation, and we have chronological synchronicity between the appearance of hooks and a more intense occupation of the coast. So again, we don't know yet, everything is interacting at the same time. And from the preliminary morphometric analysis, we see interesting temporal and spatial patterns in hook shapes that can be related to functionality of the hook, what species are they fishing, the size of the species, the behavior, the size of the mouth of the fish. It's also can be related to technological refinements and with craft specialization. We don't know yet which, probably they're all, but we are working on trying to identify them. And as a conclusion of the conclusion is, what's the consequence of this transition, the transition that people, fishermen communities experience along the northern coast through prehistory? And it's that the appearance of this shellfish hook around 7,500 years, Cal BP, marks the beginning of a specialized maritime lifeway that continues until present time. And here you can see that the pictures that are down there are modern fishermen going out to the sea to get these swordfish, and we have them in the rock art and also some evidence in the archaeological record. So then it's interesting to see how these transformations are part of our present history too. So thank you for your attention.